Good morning, everybody. Good night's sleep, everybody. This is not going to be a long presentation. A lot of people are virtualizing OS2, but frequently we see questions popping up in the community like, what VM works, what VM doesn't. This is one of a cruel rundown. People ask, is Hyper-V supported? No, it's not. And what we see with a lot of these VMs like queuing, I recently tested Proxmox, which is a ESXi type of free available version, and maybe somebody can get it to work. There is a gazillion options in Proxmox to get it to boot. But all of these hypervisors like Proxmox, different versions of QEMU and Hyper-V, OS2 tends to die at the grapevine when it boots up. Somewhere early in the boot process it boots up. What I mean with supported VMs is something like VirtualBox or ESXi or VMware Workstation. There, without changing anything on the operating system and the drivers that come out of the box, it just boots up, goes to the workplace shell, and you have a running VM. Those are also list OS2 as a supported VM platform. So in ESXi server and in VirtualBox, OS2 is in the drop-down box. Some people have been able to get QEMU to run OS2 under, but in other versions it's hit and miss. So there, I know that there is a patched version of OS2 LVMDND that you need to run, I think, in certain versions of QEMU. So what I'm saying is that there are other VMs that might work. I recently saw on OS2 World there's yet another one that popped up which might work. But the point is they don't list OS2 as being officially supported. Basically anything that should be able to run Windows, for example, like Windows 7, it should be able to work. Hyper-V is one of those examples. An older version of Hyper-V was able to get to work with a lot of trouble, but eventually when you come into the installer of ArcaOS, the mouse stops working and then it's dead. The latest version of Hyper-V just sits there at the boot logo, you press Alt F2 and it dies somewhere in the early base dev loading. Could it be made to work? Certainly, but somebody would need to go inside and see why it's not working. So that's why I stuck to, that's why for VMware tools, and this should work on both ESXi, which I'll show to you in a minute, and in VMware Workstation. Let me see.
Roderick,
Yes?
you're all talking as OS2's clients on there, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Not as host.
No, there is a version of VirtualBox that's available for OS2 to run as a VM, but practically speaking, I wouldn't recommend it. If you can get a small Linux version in there with a web browser, for example, to run some stuff, but OS2 just has a limited amount of address space. I don't know. You can do it, but it's not recommended. At Menzies we used to run virtual PC with Windows NT in it, with 512 megabytes of RAM assigned to it so that people could run actually Windows NT with Word on EcomStation, but that frequently locked up because of resource limitation. You know, it's a 32-bit OS, so that comes back to what he said. You can try it, but don't overstretch your system resources, especially when you start running programs parallel to it. It might affect system stability. So what I mean with integration in VM, one of the reasons that you see a lot of people running VirtualBox is that it adds that little extra thingy that makes it pleasant to work with. Mouse integration. It means that if you have a window open where ArcaOS is running, that when you move the mouse over it, the mouse cursor in the VM window will move with the mouse. If you don't have the mouse integration, what you then have to do is you need to move the mouse cursor over it, click on the VM window, and then the virtual machine captures the mouse cursor and it's stuck inside the VM window. Every time that you want to get the mouse released, you need to press a key combination to release it. The other thing that's a headache is that you don't have clipboard support. So if you're working with a spreadsheet on Windows or anything, or a URL, and you want to copy paste it in the VM, you don't have clipboard support. So you need to start typing over data, which is not convenient. So that's why always the recommendation from ArcaOS, if you want to virtualize, VirtualBox has all of this stuff comes right out of the box, and then you get this mouse integration. So if you install it in a VM and you follow the instructions on the website of ArcaOS, you get a working VM. And your mouse works, your clipboard works, and everything goes off. There are other additions that VirtualBox also has. Your mileage may vary with it. It's an IFS driver, and then you can share a directory that's on the hard drive, and you can access that then as a drive letter in the VM. Previous versions weren't that good. In fact, DOS sessions in a long time ago would trap it. That's all fixed, but I don't know how stable the current build is. You seem to be satisfied with it. Yes, okay. One benefit is also that the people that work on VirtualBox were all ex-OS2 junkies like Knut, etc. They were working at Innotech previously in Germany, so that explains why we have those nice additions for the product.
Your slides are running on the latest version of VirtualBox.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what does the VMware integration do? How basically this works is that the hypervisor, the virtual machine, has an interface that VMware calls the backdoor, and this is basically an interface that you can talk to from the guest operating system. You can talk to, and that's how you exchange data. And it's this backdoor interface that enables the guest OS to talk to the hypervisor, and the hypervisor can relay that information. So the other thing is the mouse coordinates. That's basically what you get, the mouse integration. If you then hover the mouse over the window and the VM software sees that your mouse goes over it, it will send the mouse coordinates of the mouse pointer to the VM, not grabbing the mouse. I can show that in a sec actually in VMware, where you can see that if you move the mouse over the browser window, that it doesn't capture it. And there is shutdown and power off support in there.
So are we basically saying that the guest editions for VMware just aren't as good as what we get with VirtualBox?
Yes.
Is that a good way to word it?
Well, I haven't looked at VMware Workstation, but for example, ESXi, as far as I can tell, doesn't have shared folders. Glenn, do you know if ESXi has something like shared network folders?
No,
Short
what
folders?
you-
No. It doesn't have it, it's just.
What you need, there's a way to do it, and you do it with a USB key.
Okay, but it's not like in VirtualBox where you have an IFS and you can tell it share my local net.
Correct.
Workstation can do that. But
Workstation, okay.
Yeah.
We don't have that. That would probably require something in the form of an IFS so that you could assign a drive letter to it. So there were some people saying, like, well, what is ESXi? Well, it is literally a headless server in the sense that what you can see here on the screen, when ESXi boots, there is just a management console with some text on it, and that's it. There's no desktop like with VirtualBox, and it just shows you here a little green window, a little black window in it telling you the version of ESXi, the CPU, and which IP address it can be reached on. Now, if you take a web browser then,
you have two machines up there? Or
yes, one is the ESXi machine, but I can't hook it up to the beamer. It doesn't have output on the display port. So now here I get into the panel of the ESXi server. There used to be a client available for this that could run natively, but just like with a lot of these other tools, this is also a bit what Proxmox looks like. It's
yeah, you can also connect to it using the VMware Workstation.
yeah, that's true. Yes. Okay. So this is actually the what it looks like. Now there was a question for some, if I install ESXi, you can get a free version of it if you register an account with VMware, and you can download it. You can put it with a stick on a system. You can also, I've got it on this system installed next to ArcaOS from GPT, so that you can do, if you want to play with ESXi, you have a dual boot with the two. The question is, how do you install ArcaOS on? Well, it's pretty simple. You can go over to the host, and you can, here on your Windows system, you can take your ArcaOS ISO, and then you can go here to the storage, and here you actually have the storage of the VM itself. And if you then here have an option called Browse Data Store, and if you create a virtual machine such as this one, or you can put it anywhere, you can upload the ISO via the browser, and then the ISO is there. If you then create a virtual machine, you can point in the wizard, you can point it to the directory where the ISO is, and then the new VM that you have created will be able to start. Creating a VM is just about as simple as it gets. On OS2 there's a wizard that helps you, and you have an option here to go other, and then you have here an option to, for example, select OS2. It's pretty easy. There are instructions on the ArcaOS website how you can do that. You can delete the SCSI controller, and then you can add a classic ID controller, and what you then get is something like this. This is a development system. You just click on the button, and it launches the VM.
It looks like it's using BIOS.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, there you have it. So, what normally why ESXi maybe for home usage is not really the most convenient thing is that if you run a Windows desktop client, it has a remote desktop built in. So you could, for example, put Ultra VNC in here. But the difference between VirtualBox and ESXi is that you run VirtualBox directly on your Windows PC, and you get the VM window on your desktop. Now you need to run a separate laptop and on another machine have a browser and then get access to it. So that's why it's more of a corporate tool. But if you want to play
run
with it,
two VM sessions simultaneously and have both operating systems
Yes,
running
yes,
simultaneously?
yes.
So that could be
Yeah,
a home arrangement.
yes, yeah, but I consider that more the advanced usage cases or good, because you can run these two VMs, but then you also need to have a second computer. It's just not like a portable thing where you've got VirtualBox on your laptop like we're doing here. You can see the whole VM window. Now, as you can actually, it should have actually loaded here. If I now pull the mouse over it, if the additions aren't loaded, then see, so the you see also that the mouse here leads to the corner of the screen. That's the mouse integration. That's why VirtualBox and VMware Workstation are much more pleasant to work with. If you turn off the VM integration every time that you pull the mouse in here and you need to click on it. The other thing that's now in here is if you, for example, go here, and credit to that goes actually to Alex, because some of his code was very useful for that. Take, for example, this. These tools are, by the way, based on the original VMware tools for OS2 that somebody else had created, but they were lacking an awful lot of code conversion. So if you copy-paste it between Windows and OS2, you can copy-paste here all of these special characters, and now there's code built into it, so that these also get properly converted. So if I go now here to Windows, and crank up Notepad, and now you get, wait a minute, catch it. I didn't catch it.
Did you turn on clipboard sharing in the guest?
Yes, that was switched on. Everything before I left home was kind of chaotic. I found out that my battery pack at 1 AM in the morning, the battery was swollen, and I had to take it apart, so it's kind of chaotic getting it done. Does anybody see VM Tools D running here?
Yeah, SD, VM tools SD.
Yeah,
37.
three down from where you are.
Oh yeah, yeah, okay.
let me help you out here. VM tools, even in a Windows environment, will occasionally, the cut and paste is just not, it's not there. And it's usually like reboot or restart the daemon or exe. I mean, I see that, I literally see this on a daily basis.
I spend dozens of hours in my boyfriend's room testing this, so it's pretty obnoxious to have it failed. I'll just reboot it.
Snappy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is just some low-end i5 CPU with an NVMe in it and 8 gigs of RAM, and that's it. Oh, by the way, if you do want to install ESXi, consult the knowledge base article on VM. You need to specify to ESXi an option, allow legacy CPU, and then you can install this on just about any equipment. ESXi checks if you have a specific CPU. So if you don't add that switch, the installer will boot all the way, and when it gets just about to the phase of installing, it will throw a screen at you and saying, unsupported CPU type, go away. But if you add at the boot option / allow legacy CPU equals true or something like that, then it will boot and you can install it.
Is that older CPUs that it doesn't like?
No, look, ESXi is primarily targeted at high-end corporate usage. So talking about a server maybe starting at $2,000, $3,000 to $12,000 with a whole bunch of VMs. What this ESXi is primarily used for is to take a whole server rack and virtualize it on a single high-end server, and then you've got, for example, anywhere from 5 to 10 server OSs running virtualized on a single server farm, and that's why they support these high-end CPUs only officially. You're talking here about a server, for example, for $12,000 and 2 Xeon cores with a total of 52 cores in it, half a terabyte of RAM and terabytes of storage. So that's why this is really the high-end stuff. That's why a lot of people don't run ESXi at home.
Most companies actually run VM servers now. They don't run physical servers anymore.
Yeah, I have 200 servers running on 6 hosts, in one of my farms. Then I have 500 virtual desktops on another farm.
No, it's not taking it. I actually had to reinstall. Oh, did the microphone? Oh, is the battery dying off again?
Did we remember to turn it off last night at the end of sessions? No.
Roderick, if you have a place where I can download the editions, you can try it on my VM here.
Yeah, I'll test one thing. One other thing that you can do that makes ESXi slightly more usable, there's a VMRC client as well available, which is an add-on which is about 100 megabytes, and then you get actually a small window. One of the things that now also happens is that if you look here in the VMware window, it also doesn't complain anymore about the VMware editions, because otherwise you continuously get a pop-up here at the top of the VM window where it says install VMs. The other thing that it now does is that if you go to actions, is this keyboard set, is this mouse set to the right? Ah, there we go. Here you now have also an option shutdown and reboot, which are normally unavailable, so now you can click. Anyway, I haven't tested this on VMware Workstation.
I have.
Oh, and the work?
The editions do seem to work, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And clipboard.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Because but the difference with the old version was, and this was just something that somebody did for a labor of love, so no criticism in the direction of the author, but it was lacking, for example, the special character conversion. Now maybe here in the US, where you generally don't have, well, for example, with Mexican names, you can have non-standard ASCII characters, Like in German, you have an U with an umlaut on it, 2 dots on top of it. That's what now the clipboard code under the bonnet does correct conversion so that when it transfers your copy-pasted text from Windows to OS2, for example, or another OS that you're using to access, or you copy-paste something the other direction, it will try and convert the characters to its best of abilities so that it actually works. There's also code in there now that the daemon can only be started once because you could start 3 instances of it. So when this will be released, that's still going to take some time. The mouse integration will not be made public because that's DDK sources. The tools themselves are based on, you can find them here actually. Did I not include? No, okay. If you want, type on Google, type VMware tools and GitHub and OS2, and then you'll get a link to the original Git repository. That's where eventually these sources will be uploaded, and so that it's covered by the Apache 2 license, and then you can get the sources there. So with that, OS2 then has an extra set of VM families covered. Is it possible to invest time in more VMs? Maybe it's possible to support parallels. They used to have support because ACO Software at the time also made a parallels workstation for OS2. Sounds familiar? That company that now makes that Mac client originally also made the OS2 version. If you look on the website, somewhere buried in the archives, you will find editions for it. I've been in touch with the tech guys going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Yes, they should work, yes, they should work, and eventually a 2nd or 3rd level tech guy told me it's not supported. It might be possible to add, in a pretty simple way, mouse support with USB mouse driver. I need to check that. They send a whole bunch of documentation to me for the SDK, but for the clipboard, they have a similar tool, a small executable that runs as a PM app, and that probably is just talking to a similar type of interface in the VM for copy-pasting support. Is Parallels worth it? I don't know. It's only, I think, currently available for Mac. I think they used to have a Windows version, but I think they only focus these days on Macs. So that would be the only other VM. As for the question if other VMs could be supported, I just gave you a rough rundown of the other VMs that are available. Could OS2 be made to work in the other VMs? Certainly, but that would either require some work on the VM side or work on the OS2 side. Whose responsibility it is? If a VM isn't capable of running OS2, you probably are better spending your time at using something that we know has certified support, such as VirtualBox or VMware Workstation. Which of the two is the best? Most people grab the VirtualBox simply because ArcaOS also installs the additions, and at the end of phase 2 you reboot and you get everything done. Clipboard, mouse, everything. The NIC driver is installed and off you go. So
VMware Workstation is a type 2, is that the right term? It is a hypervisor?
yes.
And when that runs, is it more like using VirtualBox?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, it's pretty much analogous to VirtualBox.
Okay.
To put it real simple,
The difference is cost.
all of the Hyper 2 visors run on your desktop with the graphical output in a window, and something like this, ESXi, it's just basically a headless VM. I can show you the console later at the Warpstock, but you can almost do nothing in here. You can't change the names of the VM. Maybe you can do it from Glenn. In the VM from the management console, I don't think you can really do that much management on the VMs, right?
You can configure the network and stuff.
You can configure what I'm gonna call the hardware settings of the machine. And you can get into different networks. You can set up virtual networks, virtual switches. Now they're limited in ESX.
But it's all command line.
Well, no, you can do some of that stuff through the ESX web.
No, I was making the comparison that if you just look here compared to a VMware Workstation, you just get this text mode console, and that's very limited, or you need to use a whole bunch of command line arguments. That's the
There's a lot of stuff you can do at the command line in ESX.
But
It's a Linux kernel,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Well, actually, is it Linux or is it a?
It was originally Linux. I think they rewrote it a couple of years ago.
They rewrote it. Okay.
It shows it by, yeah,
It's certainly
it's
probably
crippled.
based on Linux.
Yeah, it's based on Linux, but it's a very, very crippled and highly specialized, implementation.
Well, that's it. So I hope that adds when this is released. That's going to take some time, but at least we've got some more. Yes.
No, wait until you're done. Just-
No, I'm
Okay,
finished.
there's a few things that I wouldn't mind adding if you want to.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so one thing well, if anybody remembers one of my presentations last year, actually it was that roundtable on LANs that we did, I talked a little about how I have ESXi set up. One of the nice things about it, as Roderick says, you can buy it fairly cheap. You see, I bought like a $400 Asus Mini that's sitting at the back of my desk. It barely consumes any power, barely makes any noise. I've installed ESXi 7 on it. I've basically got it running effectively several servers to do stuff on my LAN, including yesterday I was going to demonstrate how to act as a Kerberos domain. One of my VMs has Kerberos KBC on it, so I could have showed you that. But another thing is talking about the storage. So you can define different data stores where you can store things like ISOs and so on to set up VMs. Roger briefly touched on that. There's 3 or 4 different types of storage it supports. It supports storage on the local hard disk using something called VMFS, VMware file system. But it supports a couple of remote protocols as well, including NFS. And I just for fun, I tried turning on one of my old OS2 laptops on the network, which had I think it's got like ECS2 or something running, and I installed the IBM NFS daemon on it, set it up according to like all of the file paths and so on that VMware was expecting, and lo and behold, I was able to use my OS2 laptop as a VMware storage.
Holy
The ESXi storage. I even had I put a ECS or ArcaOS ISO on there, went back to my other system, created a new VM on ESXi, loaded the ISO from the storage on my OS2 laptop, mounted it, installed the VM off it, all fine.
So in that setup,
It's a bit slow, but it's, yeah.
But
in that
that's what-
setup, the NSF was a server that's running on your
Yes.
old OS2 machine.
Yeah, OS2 convenience package does come with the full NFS server. You just have to there's a few little tricks to installing it, but yeah.
Mhm. And then the ESX is a client to that server.
Essentially, yes.
To hang consistently at the boot mode.
And when you installed it, you put the USB stick in the Windows box?
There's a weird hang
Is that right, Bobby?
at the
Sorry.
boot mode.
When you created the VM,
EFI.
you put your USB stick into the Windows box on which you were looking at the console,
Because I
the
didn't have any data to
ESX
give you.
machine.
If I
Yes,
just
and then
debug
you need to
Chrome,
copy
it'll
it.
tell
You
you how
would
to
then
do
copy
that.
the ISO file
It hangs
There's a
to the
button
data store.
in the browser.
Okay.
In the browser option, there's an option upload file.
Mhm.
So there you can choose anything
With the
from a
retail
local
kernel,
network
it
share on your
has
Windows
two
machine, and then it will upload the ISO file via the browser to the ESXi server, and
Okay.
then you have it in the local
You can't
storage.
use a debug Chrome.
If
Even
you then
directly output the video,
Add a CD
Especially
player or DVD player
that
to
just
the
lines
VM that you
Okay. So that
configure,
Okay.
then you can click there in the local data store where you've uploaded it. You click the ISO file, and then it becomes in the virtual CD player a bootable file. That's it. The same thing as a VirtualBox. Just the difference is you don't do it directly on your PC, but you do it via the web browser on that box. That's all.
Okay.
But you still had suggestions for the tools, I think.
Yeah, I'm actually VPN'd into my home VPN LAN here, so I'm accessing my own ESXi box here. I have a ArcaOS VM running in the VMware Remote Console if
Yeah,
anybody wants to look at it.
Skip
I don't have the
Till
editions,
next
but if you have a link to them, I could
It's
get them.
already released.
I don't have.
Or if you have no USB stick, I could put them on the remote storage.
Gloss over
I mean, on
that
the
for
base
now.
store.
So we don't have to
And
talk
can't,
about it.
crossing international boundaries.
Let's get a border check.
Well, we can do that later for demonstration purposes.
Yeah.
But you also had questions about additions like the VM tools. I think one thing that's not added in there is copy pasting bitmaps, you said.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I did mention that. It, like, sometimes it's helpful if I want to like transfer a screenshot or something.
I need to turn
Yeah,
off the
but I think it already came a long way compared to what they were previously.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Because the original VM tools themselves transferred the mouse coordinates via the program itself. So that means that if you move your mouse, the mouse coordinates were pushed from application user level to ring 3. At least that's how the code was supposed to work. I don't know if it, I think we never actually got it to work. So there's temporarily a modified mouse driver that's used for this demonstration purposes that does that. Because
So
the
you
VM,
get the coordinates on Windows passed?
the coordinates are passed via the web browser to the ESXi server here, when I move the mouse here on that window that I just showed, and then the ESXi server here locally, via the backdoor interface, inserts the coordinates into the mouse driver, because the VM has a kind of mouse controller built in. That's what the mouse driver talks to. But instead of getting the mouse coordinates from a real mouse, they're being relayed from what the screen does. So it goes all the way from your browser to the ESXi machine, and then they're inserted into the VM itself, and then the VM OS picks it up. So that's the whole data. Yes?
One other question. If you are running under OS 2, can you access the VMs through like Google or something?
Sorry?
Through a browser?
With
Can you
Google?
run it on OS? Can you access on OS 2 using say Google?
I haven't tested it yet.
I know. No time like the present.
Yeah, no time. I can try that after the presentation. The problem is, this is my only ESXi laptop, so I can't boot again. I need the chicken egg thing.
Hey, there's lots of people with OS 2
Yeah, yeah.
clients here.
Well, anybody who has a network cable, we can hook it up here, and then we can test that.
Your slide machine there has Google installed.
I can try.
Or yeah, you could actually run an ArcaOS VM and try pointing it to the.
Well, let's try. Is the virtual
You mean point
is
to
Google installed on here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Sure.
If you have a
Yeah.
browser,
Programs, why is installed software, I think. Maybe both.
Oh, there is.
Did you set the virtual address limit to 2048? Because that's the big.
It's close to that.
That's the biggest also ever when you
Oh,
set
it's a little bigger than that.
ever when you set a virtual address limit on OS to always do it off to a round number. I don't understand.
It's
better to
a
do
round
it.
number in tags.
It's really weird.
If it gets to the login window, that's the first thing. But the advanced thing is, will it be able to display?
I mean, it's an HTTPS presentation, so if the browser accepts HTTPS.
Yeah, but the question is, I don't know. Well, let's see. I don't know if it's
The
going to
question is,
crash.
is the web engine stable enough?
Yeah, yeah.
This is more key
And
points.
considering we're running OpenOffice at the same time, just to consume a little bit.
Oh,
of
wait a
extra
minute. Is the it is okay.
This
This
is
part
in
okay.
Google or Doodle or whatever.
This is Doodle.
Doodle.
For me, it's Doodle, it doesn't work very well, so.
Okay. Oh, this is what I will. Is it gonna refresh? I pressed the power on button, but the the window. This is where it has to display the actual boot
Okay,
logo.
yeah.
That's what I was afraid of, that it would die somewhere displaying the.
Yeah, you probably
It dies displaying the
probably have to
actual.
reboot.
No. It might actually just not be frozen because I probably. Is this how far is this still alive?
I mean, it must rely on a pretty capable web browser in order to do that fancy
Yeah.
rendering there.
Yes, but the problem is that's one of the things that haven't been. The best that I've been able to get out of Doodle so far was once sit in a Jitsi conference, and I was actually able to see people, their webcams, and hear the audio, and it was actually up for half an hour. That was pretty usable.
World
So-
record.
Anyway, if you're running Doodle and you're having stability issues, do not keep it running at 1536. Last year when I was in Orlando, it was crashing all the time. It would crash in 10 seconds. It simply runs out of address space, crank it up to 2048, and then I was able to run it for about half an hour, watching YouTube, playing videos, pausing and stopping. So I think you also had a question. You had a question?
Well, I was looking the other way for a VM that runs on OS2 as host.
On NetLabs, there is an older version of VirtualBox. I don't know. I think one of the limitations I understand is that the hardware, some hardware virtualization stuff that VirtualBox uses is not supported on the OS2 kernel. That's why you are better off than running Virtual PC for OS2 if you can get a copy to run OS2. But if you run virtual box build that Valerie made, then you should be able to run 32-bit Linux distros.
I've had actually pretty good success running the VirtualBox, other than it doesn't do serial pass-through. I don't believe it does USB pass-through.
No.
And it's got some networking limitations.
I'm not certain if the VirtualBox port for OS2 has I think it only has network support. I'm not certain. I never looked at it. But the last development was done 5 years ago. So and you can only run 32-bit OSs under it. So you can't. I don't think you can even crank up a 64-bit OS version under that, because the guest OS is running in 32-bit mode. So I don't even think. So you would be limited most likely also because of memory usage to primarily Linux distros probably that are a lot older. So
Okay, thank you.
okay. Are there any other questions?
Oh, well, you said this is gonna be released. What is this that's gonna be released? These are some
Well,
additional.
the VM tools will be released. How that's going to happen with the mouse driver is going to be first too.
And they're specifically for the VMware thing or for both VirtualBox?
This is currently implemented for the VMware stuff,
Okay.
and there might be other developments, but that's currently under discussion about how it's going to go.
Okay.
But this was just the first push to get another VM with VM additions. We didn't have them in the past. We had an old product that kind of worked, and then we've got to start to expand that functionality and add more stuff to it. And at least we've got support of two big VM families. We've got VirtualBox and we've got the VMware branch of products, and then you can both do this on ESXi and you can do this on VMware Workstation. Or is it these days called, Alex, these days called VMware Player, I think? Is that not the free version of Workstation?
It is the free version of Workstation. I'm not sure if that version has the ability to access an ESXi server or not. I know Workstation does. It does?
Okay.
Okay, good.
So, okay, well,
By the way, sorry, didn't
No, go ahead.
mean to interrupt. If you go and look for the free version of ESXi, it isn't actually listed under that name exactly. You have to search for like vSphere or something or other.
yes.
Yeah, it's confusing, the name.
Yeah,
And-
if you Google free ESXi server, you can find a bunch of articles which will tell you what to look for.
Yes, and you need to create an account with ESXi. I did find one link for ESXi 7, and actually ESXi 8 also works.
Yeah.
I've got ESXi 7 running,
It's in there.
yeah. And the other thing is, if you do, be careful not to download it from other sources. The only link I found was from some Iranian web hoster.
Not suspicious at all.
No, sorry, no.
Great guy.
Oh, and another thing, you can use it for free after, like indefinitely after registering. It's not clear from their website. It makes it sound as if you have to pay for it. You don't. That's only if you want the full vSphere like server support, because vSphere is a whole family of stuff that includes like servers for managing and migrating VMs and ESXi servers and so on. But if all you want is just an ESXi server, then all you have to do, you get a 30-day trial. By the end of 30 days, you just have to register an account, and that is free, and then you can keep on using it for non-commercial purposes.
It's not that expensive either. It's It's like a couple $100
like
bucks.
even yeah, I mean the basic version of the commercial vSphere I think is like yeah, it's a few $100.
Uh-huh.
But I'm not sure if that's one time or every year.
I think it's an annual.
Yeah.
But that's not that bad.
I mean, if you're using it for business, that's a bargain. Yeah.
What's that?
You don't need, unless you're gonna run multiple ESX hosts, you don't really need vSphere. You can probably do everything you need to do
With that free version.
with the free version. Now, there's a bunch of stuff that running vSphere allows you to do, but I mean, unless you're, I don't know, I could see you might want it, but.
I was looking at effective ways of doing like backups of VMs and stuff. vSphere does make that easier.
vSphere makes it much easier.
But, yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions then? No? Okay.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
your time.